Nobody in the Eclipse Tribunal had ever seen an execution fail. For nearly 4,000 cycles, the chamber beneath the dead star had been the final destination of empires, warlords, rogue species, and civilizations arrogant enough to threaten the balance of the galaxy. The Tribunal did not imprison enemies. It erased them. Every sentence carried out inside its gravity-lock arena was absolute, witnessed live by trillions across the galactic net, as a warning carved into history, and now humanity stood at its center. Commander Elias Ward remained perfectly still beneath the black lattice restraints wrapped around his arms and spine, while thousands of alien delegates stared down from the towering observation tiers above him. The chamber surrounding him resembled the inside of some ancient machine god. Endless rings of cold silver metal descending toward the execution platform, suspended over a bottomless artificial singularity. Blue-white energy pulsed beneath the transparent floor beneath his boots. One miscalculation, and the gravity well below would rip atoms apart faster than pain could register. The delegates had expected fear from a human. Instead, Elias looked bored. That unsettled them more than they cared to admit. Supreme Chancellor Drexel rose slowly from his elevated throne, his skeletal frame illuminated by drifting holographic glyphs. His species had evolved beneath frozen methane oceans, and even now his translucent skin shimmered with pale bioluminescent veins that pulsed whenever he spoke. "Commander Elias Ward of Earth," the Chancellor announced, his amplified voice rolling across the arena. "You stand accused of violating 13 interstellar treaties, weaponizing precursor ruins, and destabilizing sovereign sectors through unauthorized planetary excavations." 1,000 cameras focused on the human. Elias finally lifted his eyes. "The funny thing," he said calmly, "is that you still think that's why I'm here." A ripple moved through the delegates. Confusion, irritation, unease. The Chancellor ignored it. Humanity was granted provisional status under strict containment agreements. Your species was warned repeatedly not to interfere with dead world relic zones. At that, Elias smiled. Not a nervous smile, not defiant bravado, a knowing smile. "You really don't understand what those ruins are, do you?" The tribunal chamber dimmed instantly. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably as unseen systems deep within the station reacted to something buried within a human's biometric readings. Tiny fluctuations at first, barely measurable, but enough for hidden diagnostics to begin silently activating behind the walls. Far above the arena, Intelligence Officer Saran Vale noticed it first. She wasn't supposed to be watching the human. She was supposed to be monitoring the station itself. 3 restricted system cores had just come online without authorization. Her 6-fingered hands froze above her console. That was impossible. The Eclipse Tribunal had dormant systems no one was permitted to access. Systems older than the galactic assembly itself. Systems sealed so long ago that even their original builders had become myth, and somehow they were waking up. Down below, Chancellor Drexel extended a thin hand toward the execution dais. The sentence is final. Mechanical pillars emerged around Elias with thunderous precision. Rings of pale energy rotated around his restrained body, while alien spectators leaned forward in anticipation. Every species in the galaxy knew what happened next. The certainty device did not burn, poison, or disintegrate its targets. It stopped life itself. Cleanly, instantly, completely. Elias glanced upward one final time, not at the Chancellor, at the stars beyond the tribunal dome. "You should have left us buried," he whispered. The device activated. White light swallowed the chamber. Every monitor on the station flatlined simultaneously. Elias Ward's heart stopped. For 3 full seconds, silence consumed the Eclipse Tribunal. Then the dead human's heartbeat returned. One single pulse echoed through the station. Deep, mechanical, wrong. The lights across the tribunal instantly failed. Emergency sirens erupted, and somewhere far beneath the dead star, something enormous answered him. Darkness swallowed the Eclipse Tribunal so completely that, for the first time in recorded history, the station vanished from a galactic net. Across thousands of observation tiers, terrified delegates erupted into chaos as emergency barriers slammed into place with deafening force. Species that had spent centuries mastering emotional suppression abandoned dignity instantly. Some fled toward evacuation corridors. Others activated personal shields. Several simply froze, staring down at the execution platform where the human was supposed to be dead, but the body was gone. The restraint still hung suspended above the gravity well, twisted outward as though something inside them had forced itself free from molecular locks. Blue sparks cascaded across the chamber floor. The Certainty device itself, an ancient machine older than most civilizations present, had split open along its centerline. Nobody understood how. Saran Vale did not move from her station. Her pulse hammered against her throat as restricted diagnostic windows flooded her console faster than she could process them. Deep beneath the tribunal, sectors designated obsidian level were activating one after another. Entire systems previously marked non-functional had suddenly begun drawing power directly from the station core, and every single activation carried the same biometric authorization. Elias Ward. "That's impossible," whispered the analyst beside her. Saran ignored him. Her eyes narrowed on a stream of ancient machine code appearing across her screen. It wasn't modern galactic standard. It wasn't even precursor syntax. It was human, not translated into human language. Originally human. A chill crawled up her spine. That could not happen. Human civilization had only reached interstellar capability 2 centuries earlier. The tribunal station predated humanity by millions of years, didn't it? Suddenly, the emergency lighting returned in violent crimson flashes. The arena floor illuminated again. Elias Ward stood at the very edge of the gravity well, not restrained, not burned, not even wounded. He was breathing slowly, steam curling from his skin, as if his body temperature had risen beyond normal biological limits. Thin lines of faint white light moved beneath the surface of his arms and neck like glowing veins. His eyes remained fixed on the singularity below him, as though listening to something deep inside it. Security mesh descended instantly from hidden ceiling compartments, heavy plasma cannons locking onto the human from every direction. "Do not move," the station AI thundered. Elias looked up slowly. Then every security mech shut down at once. Thousands of armor machines simply powered off midair and crashed to the floor like puppets with severed strings. The chamber went silent again. High Chancellor Drexel stepped backward unconsciously. For the first time since the Assembly's founding, fear cracked through the old alien's carefully crafted authority. "What are you?" he whispered. Elias finally looked at him, and Saran Vale felt cold all over, because for one brief second, the human commander looked confused by the question. Not defensive, not angry, confused. "Asking that now?" Elias said quietly, "That's a little late." Without warning, the entire station trembled. A low-frequency vibration rolled through the tribunal, like the heartbeat of some colossal buried organism. Massive holographic windows surrounding the chamber flickered violently before switching to external visual feeds automatically. Gasps erupted everywhere. The dead moon orbiting beneath the tribunal had split open. A glowing line stretched across its surface from pole to pole, molten light pouring upward from inside the planet itself. Ancient geometric structures hidden beneath the crust began unfolding toward space in impossible mechanical patterns. Tower-sized metallic rings rotated outward through oceans of magma, while energy storms ignited across the moon's atmosphere. No known civilization possessed engineering on that scale, and yet the tribunal database identified the structures instantly. Precursor defense grid, active. Saran felt her mouth go dry. The precursors, the vanished architects of the galaxy, the species every civilization worshipped, feared, or mythologized, the species believed extinct. Her console suddenly flashed with a priority alert. Accessing sealed historical archive. She tried to cancel it. The system denied her immediately. Then the file opened by itself. A single classified image appeared on her screen. A photograph. Old, grainy, ancient beyond comprehension. It showed a group of towering armored figures standing beside a world covered in storms and oceans. Earth. Saran's breathing stopped when she noticed the final detail. The figures in the image were not alien. They were human. Behind her, screams erupted again across the tribunal as another tremor hit the station harder than before. The dead moon outside continued opening like a mechanical flower awakening after an eternal sleep. And down below in the arena, Elias Ward slowly turned toward the stars beyond the tribunal dome. Something changed in his expression then. Not fear, recognition, as if he had just heard a voice he remembered from a very long time ago. Then the human commander spoke, 4 words that made every translation system inside the station freeze mid-process. They found us again. For 12 full seconds after Elias Ward spoke, the Eclipse Tribunal lost all translation capability. To most species, it was an inconvenience. To the Galactic Assembly, it was catastrophic. Universal translation systems were among the oldest stable technologies ever inherited from the precursor age. Entire civilizations had risen and fallen without fully understanding how those systems actually worked. They simply functioned, reliably, permanently, untouchably, until now. Across the tribunal chamber, delegates shouted in hundreds of incompatible languages, while emergency interpreters struggled to compensate manually. Panic spread faster than logic. Some species immediately assumed the human had launched a cybernetic attack. Others believed the precursor systems awakening beneath the dead moon were interfering with communications. But Saran Vale knew the truth was worse. The systems had not malfunctioned. They had paused, as if something inside the station itself had stopped to listen to Elias. Her console continued flooding with restricted archival data. Ancient files unlocked faster than she could suppress them. Many carrying security clearances older than the Galactic Assembly. Entire sectors of history previously marked corrupted or lost suddenly restore themselves in real time. One phrase appeared repeatedly across dozens of classified entries. Containment species, Sol 3. Saran's stomach tightened. She opened the oldest file. The document was dated nearly 2 million years before humanity officially discovered faster-than-light travel. Her eyes scanned the first line twice because her brain refused to accept it. Earth isolation protocols remain active. Human development cycle progressing within acceptable aggression thresholds. Aggression thresholds. Not evolutionary milestones. Not civilization markers. Thresholds. A cold realization crawled into her thoughts like poison. Humanity had never been monitored as a young species. Humanity had been monitored as a weapon. Another tremor rocked the station. Outside the tribunal dome, the dead moon continued transforming. Entire continents of black metal rose from beneath the crust, locking together in orbit around the planet, like the components of some gigantic dormant machine finally reassembling itself. Lightning storms erupted through space itself, illuminating structures so massive they dwarfed fleets. Military vessels stationed nearby began retreating automatically. None of their weapon systems were responding. The precursor grid had overridden them all, and somehow it was obeying Elias Ward. Down in the arena, security forces finally moved. Dozens of heavily armored tribunal guards advanced cautiously toward the human commander, plasma lances aimed directly at his chest. Their captain, a towering reptilian veteran named Vexus, stopped several meters away. "You will submit to containment," Vexus ordered. Elias turned slowly toward him. "You still think you're in control here." The captain's throat sacs flared with irritation. "You are surrounded." "No," Elias replied softly. "You're witnessing the problem." Without warning, every screen in the tribunal activated simultaneously. Not by command, by intrusion. Ancient footage flooded across the chamber walls in violent bursts of static. Worlds burning, stars collapsing, entire fleets being ripped apart by black shapes moving through space like living voids. The delegates fell silent. The footage quality was degraded beyond recognition, but one detail remained horrifyingly clear. The losing side was the precursors. Species once believed godlike were shown retreating desperately across shattered galaxies, while enormous biomechanical entities consumed entire systems behind them. Planetary defense grids failed. Dyson arrays collapsed. Civilizations vanished beneath tides of darkness that seemed almost alive. Then the footage ended. A final message appeared in precursor script before automatically translating itself into every known language. Reset protocol failed. The chamber exploded into terrified shouting. Chancellor Drexel stumbled backward toward his advisors, pale bioluminescence flickering across his skin. "Shut it down," he roared. "Seal every external transmission immediately." But the station AI answered with something it had never said before. Command authority revoked. Silence crashed into the chamber. Then another voice replaced the AI entirely. Calm, ancient, mechanical, primary genetic key detected. Every delegate froze. Saran's blood turned to ice. Because the voice wasn't coming from the station. It was coming from everywhere. Human lineage confirmed. The dead moon outside pulsed with blinding light. Defense network awakening. One of the military observers near Saran whispered the question nobody wanted answered. What exactly are humans? No one responded, not even Elias, because at that exact moment, another transmission appeared across every screen in the tribunal. Unlike the ancient war footage, this signal was live. It showed the edge of known space, a remote border colony drifting in silence beneath distant stars. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Then the stars moved, not ships, not fleets. The darkness itself shifted unnaturally between the systems, swallowing light as it advanced. Entire constellations vanished behind enormous moving shadows too vast for the human mind to process completely. The colony transmission ended abruptly. No explosion, no distress call, just disappearance. Then the ancient mechanical voice spoke again. The extinction cycle resumes. Across the tribunal chamber, hardened diplomats, military commanders, and planetary rulers stared at the impossible darkness approaching the galaxy. But Elias Ward never looked at the screens. He was staring downward instead, toward the gravity well beneath the tribunal platform, as though something below the station was calling his name. The first fleet disappeared 17 minutes later. Not destroyed, not damaged, gone. The Valorian Ninth Armada had been positioned near the outer Perseus corridor when the precursor defense grid expanded beyond the dead moon. One moment, 32 warships were broadcasting combat telemetry across military channels. The next, every signal vanished simultaneously without debris, distress calls, or energy signatures. The silence that followed terrified the galaxy more than destruction ever could. Inside the Eclipse Tribunal, emergency war councils replaced diplomacy almost instantly. Delegates who had spent centuries trapped in bureaucratic rivalries suddenly found themselves staring at extinction maps instead of trade agreements. Entire star sectors were being quarantined in real time, while military analysts tried desperately to understand what exactly had awakened beneath the dead moon. Nobody could agree on the answer. Some claimed humanity had triggered an ancient superweapon. Others argued the precursor systems had mistaken Elias Ward for one of their creators. But a smaller, far more frightened group began considering another possibility. What if humans were precursors? The idea spread through hidden channels like a virus. Saran Vale hated how plausible it sounded. She stood inside one of the tribunal's restricted archive chambers while holographic projections rotated around her in endless layers of classified history. The deeper she searched, the worse the revelations became. There were no records of humanity's discovery, only surveillance. For thousands of years, alien civilizations had quietly monitored Earth from a distance. Observation probes hidden inside the Sol system had documented human wars, technological progress, population growth, even climate fluctuations. The reports all carried the same instruction: do not interfere. One archive described humanity surviving a prehistoric extinction event that should have eradicated most complex life on Earth. Another detailed early humans enduring ice ages far beyond projected survival thresholds. One file included a chilling line that Saran could not stop rereading. Subject species displays abnormal persistence, response under catastrophic pressure. Not intelligence, not creativity. Persistence, like humanity had been engineered specifically to refuse extinction. The chamber lights flickered violently. Then the entire station shook again. This tremor was different, deeper, closer. Warning sirens erupted across the tribunal as external feeds switched automatically to combat visuals. Gasps spread through the command center. The precursor structures orbiting the dead moon were moving. Massive metallic rings kilometers wide rotated into alignment around the planet, while streams of white energy connected them across space. Ancient machine towers unfolded outward like giant mechanical wings, releasing clouds of silver objects that accelerated toward nearby sectors at impossible speeds. "Those aren't ships," whispered military analyst. He was right. They were probes. Millions of them. And every single one carried human biometric encryption. At the center of the tribunal chamber below, Elias Ward collapsed to one knee. Blood spilled from his nose onto the black platform beneath him, while invisible pressure rippled through the air around his body. The glowing patterns beneath his skin had spread upward across his throat and jawline now, pulsing brighter every time the precursor network activated another system. For the first time since the execution failed, he looked afraid, not of the aliens, of himself. Fragments hammered through his mind in violent flashes, worlds burning beneath black skies, machines the size of moons falling into stars, human voices screaming across battlefields older than civilization itself, and always the same phrase repeating endlessly through the chaos. Reset failed. Reset failed. Reset failed. Elias gritted his teeth as another memory struck him hard enough to blur his vision. He saw Earth, not modern Earth, ancient Earth. The oceans glowed with artificial light beneath storms large enough to swallow continents. Metallic structures rose from the seafloor across entire planetary trenches, while colossal orbital platforms surrounded the world like defensive crowns. And standing at the center of it all, humans, not primitive, not young, advanced beyond comprehension. The vision vanished instantly. Elias staggered upright, breathing hard. "No," he whispered, around the tribunal. Alien officials watched him with growing horror. Commander Corvexus slowly lowered his plasma weapon. "What are you seeing?" Elias looked at him with haunted eyes. "We weren't abandoned here." Before Vexus could respond, every military channel inside the tribunal exploded with emergency alerts. A fleet had entered the Sol system. Not human, the Karzi Dominion, one of the oldest militarized species in the Assembly. Supreme War Marshal Tyrex appeared on the central holograms moments later, his scarred face illuminated by the crimson glow of command bridge already preparing for combat. "The Assembly has failed," Tyrex announced coldly. "Humanity represents an existential contamination event. Earth must be sterilized before the precursor network fully activates." Chancellor Drexel rose instantly. "You cannot launch an unauthorized assault on a council species." "I can," Tyrex replied, "while your politicians debate extinction." The transmission ended. Inside the tribunal, chaos erupted again, but Elias barely heard it, because something else had just reached him, a signal, deep beneath his thoughts. Ancient, massive, awake. Then Earth answered. Across every ocean on the planet, the water began to boil. The first images from Earth arrived 12 minutes after the oceans began boiling. At first, the Galactic Assembly assumed the planetary feeds were corrupted. Entire coastlines appeared to split apart beneath walls of steam, while sensor arrays across the Sol system malfunctioned one after another. Satellites lost orbital stability. Communications fractured. Global power grids surged beyond capacity as something enormous moved beneath the Pacific seabed. Then the ocean opened, not metaphorically, not through explosion or tectonic collapse. The water physically parted across hundreds of kilometers as colossal black structures rose slowly from the abyss beneath Earth's crust. Towering metallic spires emerged first, shedding entire mountain ranges of rock into the sea. Beneath them came vast circular mechanisms rotating upward through the boiling water like planetary-sized machine components awakening after an ancient sleep. Humanity watched in horror. The galaxy watched in disbelief. And Elias Ward felt recognition. Inside the Eclipse Tribunal, he stood motionless while thousands of alien delegates stared at the soul feeds projected across the chamber walls. Cities across Earth had gone silent beneath the shadow of impossible structures now climbing into orbit around the planet. The precursor network was not invading Earth. It was coming home. "No," Chancellor Drexel whispered. That world was classified as primitive. Saran Vale looked up from her console slowly. "There's no evidence it ever was." That statement shattered something inside the tribunal. For centuries, the galaxy had viewed humanity as an unusually violent young species that evolved on a dangerous world. a biological anomaly, aggressive, adaptive, difficult to control, but still young, still lesser. Now every hidden archive flooding the station suggested something far worse. Humanity had not evolved after precursors disappeared. Humanity had survived them. The chamber trembled again as new data poured through the awakened systems beneath the dead moon. Ancient star maps illuminated across the tribunal dome, revealing thousands of dormant precursor installations hidden throughout known space. Every single one was activating, and all of them were responding to Elias Ward heartbeat. The realization spread through the assembly in horrified silence. The execution had not triggered a weapon. It had triggered a recall signal. Deep inside the tribunal's restricted core, ancient machine intelligences began unlocking memory vaults that had remained sealed for millions of years. Saran accessed one unintentionally when her console suddenly accepted her emergency clearance as obsolete. The file opened automatically. A recording appeared. A human woman stared directly into the camera. Not modern human. Her uniform carried precursor symbols older than recorded civilization, and behind her stretched a command center so advanced it barely looked real. Entire galaxies rotated through holographic displays around her. Her expression was exhausted. "If this archive activates," she said quietly, then the final containment failed. Saran stopped breathing. The woman continued. "The enemy breached the Perseus barrier sooner than projected. Reset protocol collapsed before deployment could complete. Remaining human populations were isolated on Sol, 3 under developmental suppression to preserve continuity." More figures appeared behind the woman. Humans, all human, scientists, soldiers, leaders, the rulers of the precursor civilization were not aliens. They were Earth. Saran felt dizzy. "We designed ourselves to survive the cycle," the woman explained. "Aggression amplification, environmental adaptation, persistence conditioning, emotional bonding resilience. We altered the species generation by generation because extinction was already inside the galaxy by the time we understood the threat." The recording glitched violently. In the background, alarm screamed. Then the woman spoke the words that changed everything. "We were never building a civilization." Her eyes hardened. "We were building survivors." The transmission ended. Back inside the tribunal chamber, panic erupted on an entirely different scale. Delegates who had once feared human aggression now feared human purpose. Entire alien governments began transmitting emergency withdrawal orders from assembly space. But it was already too late. At the edge of known space, the darkness moved again. This time everyone saw it clearly. Not ships, organisms. Vast biomechanical entities drifting between stars like living voids, their surfaces absorbing light itself, while gravitational distortions rippled around them. Entire systems dimmed as they passed. Fleets sent to intercept them vanished without resistance. The ancient enemy had returned. And suddenly the precursor war made horrifying sense. No civilization could survive that thing through technology alone. Only adaptation. Only persistence. Only something willing to become monstrous enough to outlast extinction itself. Inside the chamber, Elias stumbled as another flood of memory tore through him. He saw humans fighting across dead galaxies. Saw worlds intentionally sacrificed to slow the advancing darkness. Saw precursor commanders ordering entire star systems sterilized because infection had spread too deeply. And beneath all of it, fear. The precursors had not vanished because they were defeated. They vanished because they became desperate. Elias dropped to one knee again, gripping his skull as the awakened network poured impossible knowledge into his mind. Then he heard the voice. Not mechanical. Not alien. Human. You were never meant to wake this early. His eyes snapped upward. Every screen inside the tribunal suddenly changed. A single image appeared across the chamber. An ancient structure hidden beneath Antarctica. And buried inside the ice. Something was trying to open from the inside. The object beneath Antarctica moved 37 minutes later. By then, the galaxy was already collapsing into panic. Entire trade routes had shut down as civilian vessels fled toward intersectors. Military alliances fractured hourly. Border wars that had lasted centuries ended overnight because nobody cared about territory anymore. Every government in known space had become obsessed with one question. Could humanity stop what was coming? The terrifying part was that humans themselves did not know. Earth had descended into controlled chaos. Global networks flooded with contradictory broadcasts, while precursor structures continued rising from the oceans in absolute silence. No weapons fired. No demands were issued. The ancient machines simply repositioned themselves around the planet, like guardians returning to forgotten posts. And everywhere they moved, dormant systems beneath Earth awakened with them. Cities experienced rolling blackouts as buried energy grids activated under entire continents. Mountains cracked open to reveal hidden metallic frameworks older than human history. Beneath the Sahara, something massive shifted beneath the sand. Deep under Siberia, seismic sensors detected artificial chambers expanding toward the surface. Humanity had lived on top of a machine world without ever realizing it. Inside the Eclipse Tribunal, Elias Ward stood alone in the center of the command chamber while the assembly argued around him like terrified prey animals. The glowing patterns beneath his skin had spread across both arms now, pulsing brighter every hour. He could hear the precursor systems constantly, not through sound, through instinct. Every activated structure felt connected to him somehow, like limbs awakening after being numb for millions of years. And buried beneath those signals was something worse. Hunger. The ancient network was preparing for war. Saran Vale approached cautiously through the chaos surrounding the tribunal floor. She had spent the last 6 hours buried in precursor archives, and every discovery had made the situation more horrifying. "We found additional recordings," she said quietly. Elias barely looked at her. "You shouldn't. You need to hear this." She activated a holographic projection between them. Another ancient human appeared. This one wore combat armor, unlike anything in the modern galaxy. Dark metallic plating etched with glowing white symbols that matched the patterns now spreading across Elias's skin. Behind him stretched the ruins of a dead city orbiting a broken star. "If reactivation occurs," the soldier said grimly, "then extinction pressure has resumed. Human continuity protocols will escalate automatically." Elias frowned. "What does escalation mean?" The recording answered immediately. Full species conversion. Cold silence settled between them. Saran swallowed hard before continuing. "There's more." The hologram shifted to biological schematics. Human schematics. Elias stared at them as dread slowly crept into his expression. The precursor modifications hidden inside humanity were not dormant enhancements. They were unfinished. Sections of human DNA labeled incomplete war adaptation began unfolding across the display. Entire genetic pathways remained locked behind biological triggers tied directly to extinction-level stress events. The precursors had not finished building humanity before the war ended, and now the process was restarting. "That's impossible," Elias whispered. Saran looked sick. "Your execution triggered activation across the species." As if responding to her words, emergency alerts exploded throughout the chamber. Riots had erupted across Earth. Not political unrest. Transformation panic. Hospitals worldwide reported impossible medical anomalies. Human immune systems attacking synthetic materials. Sudden spikes in body temperature. Increased neural activity beyond measurable thresholds. Some civilians claimed they could hear voices beneath electrical systems. Others described dreams of stars dying. Military reports became worse. Human soldiers exposed to combat stress were displaying abnormal reactions, faster healing, heightened aggression, reflexes exceeding baseline biology. In one classified incident, a wounded Marine reportedly survived direct atmospheric decompression long enough to manually restore a failing orbital defense array before collapsing. The changes were accelerating. Elias stared at the reports in growing horror. "They turn us into weapons." "No," Saran replied softly. She looked toward the stars beyond the tribunal dome where the darkness continued advancing system by system. "They turned you into survivors." A deep vibration suddenly rolled through the station, hard enough to crack sections of the tribunal floor. Every screen switched automatically to external feeds. The enemy had reached the Perseus frontier. Entire defensive fleets were dying in real time. The biomechanical entities moved through warships like cosmic predators through water, absorbing plasma fire without slowing while gravitational distortions crushed cruisers into spiraling debris fields. Some of the creatures were larger than moons. Others split apart into swarms that devoured stations from within. And behind them came something even larger, a shape hidden inside the darkness itself. The precursor systems reacted instantly. Across known space, dormant installations fully awakened. Ancient defense platforms emerged from gas giants. Hidden weapon arrays unfolded from dead stars. Entire asteroid belts reorganized themselves into massive combat formations. Then every precursor structure transmitted the same signal simultaneously. Command authority required. Inside the tribunal, all eyes turned toward Elias. Not because he was human anymore, because the machines believed he was in charge. His pulse quickened as thousands of ancient systems reached toward him through the network, waiting for orders he did not understand how to give. Then Antarctica transmitted a signal. The structure beneath the ice had opened completely, and something human stepped out. The figure emerging from the Antarctic structure was broadcast across the galaxy within seconds. At first, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The image itself felt wrong. The human standing beneath the shattered Antarctic ice looked ordinary from a distance. Female, tall, dark silver uniform. No visible weapons. No mechanical implants. Yet every instinct inside the tribunal chamber reacted to her presence with primal unease, as though evolution itself recognized a predator too old to exist. Snowstorms spiraled around her unnaturally, while precursor structures hovering above Earth rotated into perfect synchronization. Then she looked up at the camera feed, and every precursor system in the galaxy went silent. The biomechanical enemy advancing through the Persis frontier paused as well. For one impossible moment, the entire war stopped. Elias felt the connection instantly, not through memory this time. Recognition. The woman's eyes narrowed slightly as if she found something unexpected far away. "Him?" she asked quietly. The transmission feed distorted violently. Inside the tribunal, dozens of systems overloaded at once. Ancient consoles burst apart in showers of sparks, while the precursor network surrounding Elias surged so hard he nearly collapsed. Saran grabbed his arm. "What's happening?" Elias stared at the screen in disbelief. "I know her." The words terrified him because they were true, not from history, not from archived memories. Personally, fragments slammed into him again. He saw the woman standing beside oceans of fire beneath alien skies, saw her issuing evacuation orders while stars collapsed overhead, saw billions dying while she remained perfectly calm, and always the same expression burned into her face. Guilt. The memory vanished as suddenly as it came. On Earth, the woman stepped forward across the frozen crater, surrounding the open structure. Massive precursor towers loomed behind her now, fully active and stretching into orbit like metallic cathedrals. Human military forces surrounded the site from a distance, but none dared approach. Something about her presence disrupted electronic systems completely. Aircraft dropped from the sky if they flew too close. Satellites malfunctioned overhead. Even the precursor machines appeared cautious around her. Then she finally spoke again. Who activated the continuity network? Her voice carried across every human communication system on Earth simultaneously. Inside the tribunal, Elias answered before realizing he intended to. "I did." The woman froze. For the first time, emotion cracked through her composure. Not anger, fear. The transmission feed changed instantly. The woman appeared directly before Elias through a holographic projection, so advanced it looked physically real. Every delegate recoiled instinctively. She studied Elias in silence for several seconds. Then her expression darkened. "You're too early." "Who are you?" Elias demanded. The woman ignored the question entirely. "How much has the network restored?" "Enough to know humanity was engineered. That isn't the problem." Her gaze shifted briefly toward the advancing darkness displayed on the tribunal screens. "The problem is that the enemy noticed." Cold silence spread through the chamber. Elias stepped forward. "Then help us stop them." Something painful flickered behind her eyes. "You still don't understand what's happening." Without warning, The tribunal AI reactivated violently, not the normal station intelligence. Something older. The ancient mechanical voice returned across every chamber simultaneously. Sterilization protocol ready. The words hit the assembly harder than any weapon. Then the galaxy map changed. Thousands of precursor installations illuminated across known space, linking together into vast geometric patterns surrounding the advancing enemy. Weapon systems. Planetary-scale weapon systems. Saran's face drained of color as tactical projections unfolded automatically. The precursor network was preparing to ignite entire sectors of inhabited space, not targeted attacks. Extermination zones. The woman closed her eyes briefly. They rebuilt the protocol, she whispered. Elias looked between her and the tactical displays in horror. What protocol? When she answered, her voice sounded exhausted beyond comprehension. The last solution. Images flooded the screens instantly. Ancient war footage. Entire galaxies burning. Human fleets activating colossal stellar weapons that erase infected systems by the thousands. Civilization sacrificed deliberately to slow the enemy's spread. Precursor commanders authorizing extinction. Events with cold mathematical precision. The enemy could not simply be fought. It consumed biological civilizations from within, and the only thing that ever slowed it was annihilating entire regions of space before infection spread further. The realization shattered the tribunal. Chancellor Drexel stared at the projections in disbelief. You're talking about genocide. I'm talking about survival, the woman replied sharply. The biomechanical entities at the Perseus frontier suddenly accelerated. Defensive fleets collapsed almost instantly beneath the renewed assault. Entire colonies disappeared from the star maps one after another as the darkness advanced deeper into inhabited territory. The precursor systems responded immediately. Massive weapon arrays began charging across the galaxy. Then Elias saw the targeting trajectories, not toward the enemy, toward populated systems already in the enemy's path. Billions. The network intended to burn billions alive before the darkness reached them. No, Elias said. The woman looked at him carefully. You think we didn't search for another way? She asked softly. We fought this war for longer than your species remembers existing. Every alternative failed. Elias turned toward the charging weapon systems surrounding the galaxy. The precursor network pulsed through his mind constantly now, waiting for authorization, waiting for humanity to become what it was designed to be, a species willing to survive at any cost. Then the woman said the words that broke him completely. The moment you trigger the network, she whispered, humanity stopped being a civilization. The ancient weapon arrays locked onto their first targets. You became the reset. The first precursor weapon fired 3 minutes later. A beam of white light erupted from a dormant structure orbiting a dead gas giant near the Perseus frontier, crossing half a sector in complete silence before striking the infected colony system of Arcanes. There was no explosion, no cinematic firestorm. The stars simply disappeared, for inhabited worlds vanished from existence instantly, consumed so completely that even gravitational signatures collapsed inward afterward. Billions of lives erased in less than a heartbeat. Inside the Eclipse Tribunal, nobody spoke. The silence was worse than panic now, because every species in the chamber understood the same horrifying truth. The precursors had not failed because they lacked power. They failed because survival eventually demanded becoming monsters. And now the network expected humanity to continue the cycle. Across the galaxy, more weapon arrays aligned toward populated systems already threatened by the advancing darkness. Mathematical projections unfolded across every tribunal display with merciless precision. Entire sectors had already been designated unrecoverable. Sacrifice zones. The woman from Antarctica stood motionless within the holographic projection, while the tribunal stared at her like a ghost. We delayed extinction for nearly 4 million years, she said quietly. But eventually the equation becomes simple. Kill billions now, or lose trillions later. No, Elias said again. This time his voice carried through the chamber with absolute certainty. The woman studied him carefully. You think morality survives extinction pressure? I think humanity does. The precursor systems reacted instantly to his rising pulse. Across the galaxy, Weapon platforms paused mid-charge. Every delegate looked toward Elias. Every machine waited. The woman's expression hardened. You cannot stop the network without losing control of the defense grid entirely. Then we lose it. Her eyes narrowed slightly for the first time. And when the enemy reaches Earth, Elias turned toward the stars beyond the tribunal dome, where the darkness consumed system after system like a living void devouring the galaxy whole. Then he smiled, not because he was confident, because suddenly he understood something the precursors never had. They engineered us to survive, he said softly, but they forgot why humans fight so hard to survive in the first place. The woman said nothing. For the first time since her awakening, uncertainty crossed her face. Elias stepped toward the center of the chamber, while the precursor network thundered through his nervous system like a galaxy-sized heartbeat. The glowing patterns beneath his skin blazed brighter than ever now, spreading across his chest and throat as ancient systems demanded command authorization. He could feel the weapon arrays, feel the sterilization protocol, waiting for release. All he had to do was surrender to it. Humanity would survive, but the galaxy would become a graveyard. No more resets, Elias whispered. Then he severed the network. Pain unlike anything imaginable ripped through him instantly. Every precursor system in existence screamed across his nervous system as command authority collapsed simultaneously. The glowing patterns across his body cracked like burning fractures beneath his skin, while blood streamed from his eyes and mouth. Across the galaxy, ancient machines shut down one after another. Weapon arrays powered off. Defense grids collapsed. The sterilization protocol died unfinished. And at the edge of known space, the darkness surged forward immediately. Alarms exploded through the tribunal chamber. They're accelerating. Enemy breach in the Persis intersectors. We lost the frontier fleets. The woman stared at Elias in disbelief. Do you understand what you've done? Yes, Elias rasped. He could barely stand now. But now we fight like humans. The tribunal shook violently as the first enemy entities entered assembly territory. Entire fleets burned across the tactical displays, while panic spread through every surviving government. Then something unexpected happened. Human civilian channels activated. Not military. Civilian. Across Earth, ordinary people began broadcasting everything they had. Engineering designs, emergency logistics, improvised weapons, navigation data, medical breakthroughs. Civilian fleets volunteered for evacuation routes without orders. Mining vessels converted themselves into ramming ships. Cargo pilots flew directly into collapsing war zones to retrieve stranded aliens they had once feared. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity responded to extinction not with surrender, but cooperation. Chaotic, reckless, improvised cooperation. Exactly the kind of irrational behavior the precursor simulations had always failed to predict. Alien species began joining them. Then more, and more. Old enemies coordinated defenses together for the first time in history because humans forced them to, not through fear, not through dominance, through example. The woman from Antarctica watched the unfolding response with widening eyes. They never did this before, she whispered. Elias looked at her weakly. Because you taught humanity how to survive. Far beyond the tribunal. The final battle erupted across the Perseus corridor. Human fleets fought beside species that had once demanded Earth's extermination. Outmatched warships used impossible tactics. Civilian transports became shields. Mining lasers tore open enemy organisms from the inside, while human soldiers boarded biomechanical entities, knowing they would never return. Not because humanity was fearless, because humanity refused to let everyone else die alone. And slowly, the darkness stopped advancing. Inside the Eclipse Tribunal, the ancient precursor systems finally fell silent completely. Millions of years of extinction protocols ended not with ultimate victory, but with choice. The woman stared toward Earth for a very long time. Then, for the first time in 4 million years, she smiled. Small. Human, hopeful, maybe, she whispered softly, this version survives. Days later, the tribunal chamber where humanity had once been sentenced to death reopened under a different name, the Alliance Assembly. No ruling species, No containment classifications, no resets, only survivors. And at the very center of the chamber stood a simple inscription carved beneath the stars. Humanity was never the strongest species in the galaxy. It was the one that refused to become extinct alone.